to the cloud. Let's
Hi.
see. Okay.
Okay.
So I'll turn that off though, just because unless we want to hear this like I'll.
Recording in progress.
Hi everyone, welcome. It seems like we're hearing a bit of an echo. Um, I think that's been resolved actually. So as we're waiting for all of the guests to join, I just want to welcome all of you and thank you for joining us. This is an incredible initiative. Sorry, I didn't realize that I was on mute. I just wanted to welcome everyone, um, and thank you all for joining. And I look forward to hearing more together with you as Becca and Ari share. But we'll take a few more minutes just to let everyone join. While we're waiting, I'll just take a moment to talk about PPI, Partners for Progressive Israel. We are an organization that educates American Jews about the realities of Israel. We advocate towards peace between Israel and its neighbors, especially looking at the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And we're part of this coalition called the Protect the Harvest Coalition. I'm sure that soon enough Becca and Ari will explain better than I will, but just to open up with the words, um, the Protect the Harvest Coalition is a coalition of many different organizations, including, for example, Rabbis for Human Rights, Achvat Amim, the New Israel Fund, and so on, that are bringing American Jews to Israel and Palestine, to the land for the Palestinian olive harvest, which starts in October. It's an incredibly important cultural and economic moment for for Palestinians as they get to collect their harvest their olives, which is a vital source of income for them. So this initiative is incredibly important, and I really hope that we manage to bring as big of a coalition as possible in order to provide support and protective presence while they engage in this work. So now that we're almost 5 minutes after the start, I think that in order to respect everyone's time, we can begin. So I'd love to introduce Becca Strober and Ariel Naveh. Becca is the executive director of Achvat Amim, and Rabbi Ariel Naveh is a board member for PPI, and they're going to be hosting us today and telling us more about Protect the Harvest.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Aiki, for having us. Thanks everyone for showing up. Um, I'm gonna start us off and then Ari will take over. Um, so basically we'll take maybe kind of like somewhere between 20 and 30 minutes just to give a little bit of an explanation about the harvest and why we're doing this campaign and the importance of it and kind of like why us. And then after Ari and I finish, we will open it up for any questions that you might have. So first of all, Protect the Harvest is basically, as Ike started mentioning, just a large campaign between a lot of organizations and individual activists. The organization I'm a part of, Achvat Amim, and Partners for Progressive Israel are two of the organizations that are part of the campaign, but also two of the organizations who are on like the actual decision-making steering committee, if you will, of about 10 organizations. So that's really a really exciting partnership that we have going on here. Um, and to make kind of a long story short, last year, the violence during the olive harvest was the worst that we've ever seen. I myself am Israeli American. I've been probably to the last like 12 of 15 harvests, so the vast majority of them. And last year was the first time that we basically just really struggled. We almost didn't manage to harvest olives, and that wasn't just Israeli Jews who were joining for olive harvest days. That was the Palestinian farmers themselves were really struggling to reach their land because Israeli authorities was closing the land off to them, creating what's called a closed military zone order, which basically means people can't go into that area. It's supposed to be used for security reasons, but like we saw last year, it's often used for political reasons of limiting access for political reasons, limiting access to land. And those who managed to make it to the land, we've also been seeing a huge increase in settler violence. Unsurprisingly, that trend has continued from last year to this year. But when we were kind of finishing up the olive harvest last year, a bunch of us sat down, Israelis, internationals, and Palestinian farmers, and kind of thought, like, what can we do to fight back? Like, what can we do to make next year better? And I think the general agreement that we kind of all came to was we were really overwhelmed last year. And so this year we want to be the ones to overwhelm. We want a mass movement of bringing people to the West Bank they can't stop us all. They can't prevent every single harvest from happening. I will add just a few things on that, which is that last harvest basically was the harvest that's a product of like the 2024-2025 winter. And there was a pretty bad drought in the land. And so for those who did manage to harvest last year, there actually weren't that many olives. This year is very different. There's an amazing amount of rain this past winter. And so there are a lot of olives on the tree right now, which makes it even more important to actually show up and be able to harvest. We're very aware of the fact that even if families make it to their land, they may make it to their land only one time this season. And so being able to go in a group of 15 or 20 people is going to be really significant in terms of the actual harvest. And in general, the Palestinian economy right now is in shambles, and it's quite political and quite purposeful. The current finance minister Bezalel Smotrich, who's also a very extreme right-wing member of the settlement movement, is very purposefully trying to break down the Palestinian economy as a way to dismantle and destroy the Palestinian Authority, and that's kind of coupled with also the fact that. And of course, there's been very little tourism the past few years. First, there was COVID, and then there was October 7th and the post-October 7th reality. And so the West Bank has just been in a huge economic downturn. And so by going this year and standing in solidarity with Palestinians, we're going to be able to kind of do our part to hopefully slightly improve the economic situation, both in terms of them actually being able to pick olives, like aiding where we can and hopefully making that slightly more accessible or way more accessible. We'll see how our strategy works. But also we'll be staying at Palestinian run and mainly owned hotels or homestays, guest houses. The bus companies we're going to be working with are Palestinian from East Jerusalem. The food that we'll be buying is Palestinian, unless you need kosher food, in which case we will be bringing from Jerusalem, just to clarify that. But long story short is that the money that you pay in order to participate in this week really directly goes back into the Palestinian economy, which is really, really important to us right now. And it's part of how we can come and bring solidarity. And so let me just kind of give a breakdown of of what this looks like. First of all, the place where we will be harvesting olives for the most part is Area C. I'm not going to go into too much detail right now, but if you join Protect the Harvest campaign, we are going to do some educational sessions before and during the harvest. But long story short, Area C is 60% of the West Bank. It's under direct Israeli military control, meaning you need Israeli permission to access your land. You need Israeli, if you're Palestinian, you need Israeli permission to build your house or to add an addition to your house. You need Israeli permission to get connected to water or to electricity, with which the vast majority of Palestinian communities in Area C are not, because the Israeli army doesn't allow it. And that's also where all of the settlements are, and for the most part, where all of the outposts are. An outpost just being a smaller settlement that even the Israeli government agrees is illegal. Um, and so that's where the heart of a lot of this violence is. And that's because the political campaign right now and for many years has been a campaign to annex, at the very least, Area C, and to annex it to make it part of Israel, without Palestinians really inside of it. And so the way to get Palestinians to leave is to use violence. Um, we're seeing a huge uptick in violence the past few weeks, and so I think we're even more steadfast in our desire and understanding of the need to go up and show up in solidarity. And I'll explain a little bit how the week looks. There are 4 weeks in this campaign that you can sign up for. Every single one of them is exactly the same. And we're hoping to have upwards of 60 people per week. We're starting to approach those numbers, which is really exciting. We have close to 150 people already signed up. The deadline to sign up is August 21st, and I think we're very likely to reach 200 people by then, which is really incredible, just the amount of people who are showing up to do this. And the idea is that everyone has a place to stay in West Jerusalem that will be easily accessible on Saturday night. And then Sunday is the first true day of I don't know if programming is the right word, but of this week that we're doing together. And Sunday is basically a training day. We will do a session that is on de-escalation. What do we do if we see the army? What do we do if we encounter soldiers? Who do we listen to? Who do we, what's our role? So a de-escalation training, a know your rights training, and a cultural sensitivity training. That's going to be on Sunday, and then together we're all going to go to wherever we're staying. Depending on the week you join, we might be staying in Bethlehem, which is right outside of Jerusalem. If you're joining and you have Israeli citizenship, you'll be staying near to Bethlehem in a place called Beit Jala, which is a lovely community that has hosted us many times. The reason to stay there is because Israeli citizens technically can't be in Area A, and Bethlehem is in Area A, and Beit Jala is in Area C. And if that week, and if we're staying in Bethlehem, then that week we're going to be harvesting near Bethlehem and Jerusalem. And if it's one of the weeks where we're harvesting somewhere between Ramallah and Nablus, which is a lot of the relationships that we have and the places that we end up harvesting, likely we'll be staying in the Palestinian Christian community of Taibe. And everyone can stay there together because it's Area B. So Israelis and Palestinians are all allowed to be in that area. And then, so basically Sunday's kind of like a bit of a training day. And then Monday through Friday, we wake up early, have some breakfast, head out to the farm, to whichever plot we're going to that day, and we're going to go try and harvest. Assuming we get there and we manage to harvest, we'll be there for the whole morning, and until the mid-afternoon, we'll have a simple lunch there. And for those who have never done olive harvest, it's really fun. It's somewhat physical, but there's many ways to participate, and people of different physical abilities certainly can and do participate. You can whack the trees with wooden rods, which is my favorite thing, kind of like baseball bats to get the olives down. Then they fall to the ground. You can be the person picking them up, or you can also climb into trees to get some of the olives down. So there really is a lot of parts. It's a very flexible, multiple hours. People are working at their own pace. It's not a competition. There's no, oh, we have to get these certain amount of olives, we have to get these certain amount of trees in a certain amount of time. It is going to, as I mentioned, be very helpful for when we manage to get to plots of land to have so many people being able to harvest, because we're very aware that it's very possible that a lot of these families will only access their lands once or twice throughout the season. And so those extra hands are going to be a difference of a fair amount of hundreds of shekels, if not thousands. Once we finish that day, we will go back to where we're staying. Some of the days there'll be an optional like get together learning session, learning from Palestinian and Israeli human rights defenders and educators. And then basically like there's dinner and like, free time and take a shower and relax and go to bed early or go to bed late, or you do you, basically. Walk around Bethlehem, you do you. If we're in Taipei, there's a really lovely beer brewery with a great beer that I love. And so basically it'll just be free time. It's important to say that we won't make it every single day to olive harvest. Last year they barely made it at all. I don't want to get into all the details on a recorded call of the strategies we have to getting to the land, but there are strategies that we have to getting to the land and having this year be more successful. And so I'm very, very hopeful. But it's important that if you come in terms of setting expectations, you should expect that we're not going to make it every single day. And that's just the reality of the of what we're in right now, of the violence that we're in right now. The other thing I'll say is just, about risk. There's a level of risk of coming and doing this work right now. I want to say that when doing activism in the West Bank, there's a scale of how risky things are. Some people will sleep in Palestinian villages that have been under attack or are likely to be under attack, and basically wait for that violence to come. And that's incredibly risky because violence is going to come at some point and your job is to de-escalate. I would then put at the other side of that like going on an educational tour, so going on a tour with like Breaking the Silence, for example, is very not risky. Meaning, I say this as someone who, before I worked at Achvat Amim, worked at Breaking the Silence for 7 years. I led hundreds, if not over 1,000 tours to the West Bank. And outside of me getting egged a few times, nothing ever happened to a participant, right? So there's a scale. Our olive harvest is somewhere in the middle, I would put it. There's risk because we're going out every day to the West Bank. We're doing it at a time in which there's a lot of violence towards Palestinians. For many settlers, harming Israeli citizens or internationals, including people who are older and including even children, is a red line that's been crossed many times, and we know that they're willing to cross that red line. And at the same time, I put it in the middle for a bunch of reasons. The first is that we are going to have coordinators on the ground. The olive harvest, like the steering committee at Protect the Harvest, we are training coordinators who will be with you. They'll also be with you like in the hotel. There's going to be one coordinator for about 15 people, and you'll be going out in groups of about 15 people to olive harvests. And those people will be trained and are very knowledgeable in things like de-escalation. There's also going to be rabbis for human rights coordinators on the ground who will be with us the whole time. They too are very trained in things like de-escalation. The most likely thing to happen is for our minibuses or vans to get turned away. That's the most likely thing that's going to happen, right? But we've seen in the past that there is some potential of physical violence towards us. I think the vast majority of people are not going to see that, are not going to experience it. And may we just have a lot of very boring and hardworking days harvesting olives. And the other thing is that since last olive harvest, there's been a much larger campaign of deportations and revoking people's ETAs, which is the visa that you have in order to come visit Israel. If you are an Israeli citizen, it's not relevant for you. The country can't kick you out. But if you are not an Israeli citizen, it could be relevant. With that being said, I want to be really clear that the people who that's happening to right now are in very intensive activist groups who come and like live for months at a time in Palestinian communities. And Rabbis for Human Rights, who is hosting us on their olive harvest, has not been a true target of this so far. It could change. I absolutely can't promise that it can't change. And if your thought is 100% I cannot face the potential of deportation, then this might not be for you. But I think the likelihood is quite limited in our case. But things change on the ground rapidly, right? We, of course, will do everything that we can for that to not be the case. That's not the purpose of this harvest. The purpose is to really go, the center of this harvest are the Palestinian farmers. It's not us. We're not the story here. The story is the farmers, and we're just doing what we can in order to help out, basically, right? We're not heroes. We're not saviors. We're going to help in the way that we can. And so, for example, if we see that there's been a lot of violence in a specific region the past few days, and we're supposed to go to that region tomorrow, we'll switch the region that we're going to go to because our goal is to actually get somewhere and harvest. Our goal is to not get arrested and get on national and international TV, right? So I'm just, I want to make those things really clear that we have risk assessment. It will be very active. We have very trained people doing this. And we can't promise 100% that there will be no violence and that not a single person will get detained or have a deportation if they come. And one thing I will say in terms of if you're asking, am I the right person to come? Probably you are the right person to come, but I think there's two things to consider, and then I'm going to hand it over to Ari. The first thing is just like physical fitness. A lot of people who come have different like physical abilities. Some people are older, some people are younger. That's okay. People do this from a bunch of different ages. But what my recommendation is that you have to be stable on your feet. When we're going to do olive harvest, there's a lot of like roots and rocks. I mean, literally, we're going into a field. Sometimes getting to that field, the car that you're going in or the bus that you're going in might not make it exactly to that field. So we might have to walk up a hill. We might have to walk down a hill. It's going to be hot outside. It's not going to be summer hot outside, but it's the Middle East in October or early November. In the heat of the day, it's not horrible, but it can be a bit hot, and you're going to be out there for hours. And so you have to kind of like, be in okay physical fitness, and you have to be stable on your feet. You have to be able to navigate uneven ground. And that's true just for the olive harvest, but also if settlers come and try and provoke us, there's a good chance that the people who are with you, the coordinators on the ground, will ask you to move to a certain area or to walk back to the farmer's home if it's nearby or something along those lines. And sometimes that might require, slightly faster movements. If you think that you can handle that, that's great. The other thing is that we are nonviolent activists. Every single organization that's participating are students or believers in nonviolence. And I'm a nonviolent activist myself. I've been practicing nonviolence for 15 years. That's after I was in the Israeli army and carried a gun for 2 years and taught infantry soldiers how to use them. That's after I took that gun and many times told Palestinians where they could or couldn't walk in the West Bank as a soldier. When you meet violence, and there will be those who try and provoke us, may it be the army, may it be Israeli police, may it be Israeli settlers, the most intuitive thing we can do is respond with anger and often violence. If it's not random, that when a kid on the playground pushes another kid, that other kid pushes him back. Right? It's because that's what our intuition tells us to do. And nonviolence is going against our intuition. Nonviolence is staying calm when you want to be angry. Nonviolence is putting your hands behind your back when you want to throw a punch. Right? And maybe that seems obvious to people, but having done this for a long time, in the moment, it's not always obvious. And so that's why we'll go through some training. But if you're someone who can't, when people get, when you feel anger at a lack of justice or that someone is doing you wrong or someone has a level of control over you, we need you to be able to control that. There'll be time afterwards on the bus and when we get back to the hotel to like scream at the whole entire world. But in that moment, we need you to hold that. We need you to not take the situation and the law into your own hands. Um, if you are someone who can do that well, who can remain calm, then I think you're a great person to join the harvest. If you're someone who struggles to not let your anger out immediately, this might not be for you because we very much try and practice a do no harm type of activism. And we always have to remember that we're going to be able to leave on buses. We're going to be able to leave the plot that we're on. But for the Palestinian farmers and families, this is their life when we're there and after we go. And the last thing we want to do is bring more harm or attention to them. And so that's really important if you're asking yourself, oh, am I the right person to come? This is kind of the types that we're advocating for. And I think I think most people can do that with a bit of training. But it's just very important for me to put that out there, that that's the type of activism that we're doing. I'm going to hand it over to Ari to talk about why us? Why should we at PPI and American Jews in general and others, why should we go? So Ari, take us away.
Yeah. Firstly, thank you so much, Becca, for that extremely adept and deeply passionate explanation of the harvest, the logistics of the trip, what it's all about, why it's all about, and why it is so fundamental and vital, not just for the program, but for a lot of what we're all about with PPI and in general. And as they said, I'm here to talk a little bit about why the why of it all, why PPI is on board, collaborating with this incredible group of other organizations doing this work, why it's important on our end, and most importantly, how we are using our privilege as people who are able to, as Becca said, able to come and go for this type of experience, and what the significance of using our privilege for this kind of opportunity means for us, right? Something that just this past weekend, Becca and I both actually had the sincere pleasure to attend another program that PPI collaborated on, the Israeli and Palestinian Youth and Solidarity Summit at Camp Shamria in upstate New York. And this was just a really beautiful opportunity to bring in young people from Israel, from Palestine, from all over the states, Arab and Jewish alike, to talk about what's going on in the land right now, and really listen to each other and be in relationship with each other and hear from folks like Becca and their partners on this Protect the Harvest collaboration. And one thing that I think is the most important thing to highlight that I heard from another of our partners, Zach Whitus, who works for the New Israel Fund, that he was talking about Protect the Harvest to all of these participants at the summit, was that we are going at the invitation of members of these communities in the West Bank, right? We are there at their request to be of assistance to them for the harvest. And I bring that up because I think that's the most important element of this whole experience and why I think it's so important for PPI to be on board with this collaboration. This is not charity, right? We're not parachuting in to save the day for these communities and these people who are essentially trying to do their jobs, right? And live their lives and do the work that they need to do in order to subsist in the West Bank. And I appreciate that distinction so much, because what it says to me is that, and why I think it's so vital that PPI as an organization is on board with this, is that this is solidarity work. We are doing this because it is vital. We are doing this absolutely because these people need our help. But we're not doing this because it is a charity case. We're not doing this because it's going to make us feel good. Obviously, of course, it will make us feel good. And I hope that those of you who will join us um, come back with a sense of sincere accomplishment and pride and all of these incredible sentiments. But I also hope that you come back with the sense that you did something in solidarity with this community. And this is why I think it's so vital, right? This is a cross-religious uh, collaborative program in the sense that obviously um, a lot of the folks coming in from the States will be Jewish, but not everybody. And that's so beautiful because, again, this is solidarity work that we are doing. We as PPI are, and you heard from Ike at the top of the call, most of our work is exactly this kind of work. It is solidarity work. It is the demonstration that our safety as Jews, as Israelis, is and always will be bound up in the safety of Palestinians in the West Bank, in Israel proper, in Gaza, all of the above. And this is one of the most, well, certainly one of the most direct opportunities that you can have to demonstrate that that safety in solidarity that we have. And I think, I have in the past led and participated in a number of trips through American Jewish World Service to global South communities all over the world, right? And this is a similar point that AJWS makes when training folks to go on trips all over the world. It is that this is solidarity work. We're not here to save the day so that you can go, like I said, so you can go home and feel like, you're the hero in the story, as Becca said. We are part of the story. We are an incredibly vital part of the story. But the main characters are and always will be the farmers that are harvesting their olives. And our role in that capacity is to use our bodies to stand in solidarity with them and make sure that they can do that work safely and that they can rely on us to be able to continue that work as safely as possible. And that's the core value of what PPI is all about. Always understanding that the safety of Israel is and always will be bound up in the safety of Palestinians. And this is one of the most direct ways to show that we have. Oh, sorry, I am in my car on my phone right now. So I hope, I'm sorry if I just fell out a little bit. But as Becca said, we're happy to take questions from you guys right now. I know this is a lot of information that we're kind of throwing at you right now and a lot of context. But as I said, I think I am. I'm going to be really blunt. I'm kind of in thrall. I'm not thrall. I'm in awe of this collaborative program that we have and the organizations that have been brought together to do this work. And the fact that we now have this many participants joining us, really from all over the country, really from all over the world. It's beautiful, and it is exactly the kind of demonstration of solidarity that we need. And it's exactly the kind of demonstration of solidarity that the current Israeli government hates, which is incentive in and of itself, for me at least. So I'll stop for now and give you guys the opportunity to ask some questions because I imagine you have a lot.
If there are no questions or no questions yet, which also, if you prefer to write them in the chat, you're welcome to. Maybe I'll just explain for those who want to join. So one of the partners of this trip is Mejdi Tours, and they're doing all of the logistics. They're a very well known, very old tour group, Palestinian run. Aziza Boussara, who is the founder, just wrote a really amazing book with the Mozinon, and I think is also just very well known and just a great human overall. Um,
If you haven't seen their joint interview with Jon Stewart on The Daily Show, all of you, I highly recommend it. It's it's beautiful.
Yeah, it is. And so they're doing all the logistics. So all the payments, for example, go through them. Um, no organization here, of course, is taking a profit on anything that we're doing, including Mejdi, who's the only non-NGO, I believe, who is signed on. I mean, some of the groups signed on are even more grassroots than NGOs, but Mejdi's the only like actual technical company, but they're also not taking profit for this. The cost of actually going is 1,600 US dollars. That's how much we priced it as. It does not include flights. We're going to send out a helpful tip, like page of tips of how to hopefully get slightly more affordable flights. But there's also an option for those who 1,600 is outside of their budget, and we know it can be a lot of money. That's 700 US dollars. And for those who want to come and want to make sure that other people can come, even if they can't afford the whole price, there's a solidarity option, and that's $2,100, and that covers your participation and makes up the rest of the participation for someone else who's choosing the subsidized price. And a lot of people have chosen the solidarity price. It's an amazing gift. We're so grateful. And also, if you want to come and only like, and 1,600 is too much for you, but 700 works, then you're 100% invited. We're also independently, of course, raising money in order to make this happen as the coalition. And our idea is for it to be as accessible as possible for people. As for the dates that someone asked, if you go into the protecttheharvest.net and you say like join the harvest, the dates are written there really clearly. The first week is mid-October, the last week ends mid-November. Yeah.
So I think it's actually cool to note that the some of the trips will coincide with the Israeli elections, which that Gesundheit. There are a lot of there are a lot of things that can happen as a result of those elections. God willing, some of those will be significantly positive in the sense that, the current government will be replaced by one that is less immediately fascistic. Um, and there can, as Becca mentioned, there can be some ancillary consequences to that in the sense of what may happen in the West Bank while you're there. So it is also, again, important to note, as Becca said, the risk falls somewhere in the middle of that spectrum that they just explained earlier.
Does anyone else have other burning questions? Or not burning, just curious ones. Okay, yes. So, are there language requirements? No. The coordinators will definitely be Hebrew speakers. Some of them will likely also be Arabic speakers, but you don't have a language requirement for joining. Dietary restrictions can be accommodated. I mean, unless it's something really, really specifically difficult. Like gluten-free can be accommodated. Kosher, of course, can be accommodated. Allergies for the most part can be accommodated again, unless maybe it's like really like, beyond like you have to bring completely your own food, then maybe send me an email and we can talk about it more. Medical insurance, you get yourself. Um, and we'll let you know when you sign up, depending on which week it is, if there's a specific medical insurance we require, like we recommend. But for the most part, any travel insurance should do. I've done a lot of trips before. Travel insurance has never been an issue, pretty much regardless of the type that you take. I would add on to it extreme sport, not because we're going to like, I don't know, not because of like settlers or anything, just because like when there are like roots and rocks, it can be considered hiking. It's just, I think, better in situations like this to say you're doing an extreme sport, even if you're not, so that they can say, so that they can't say, oh, you were hiking on roots and rocks if you like sprain your ankle or something. Um, but beyond that, I mean, it's the regular travel insurance. I also always really recommend people getting travel insurance beyond the medical aspects, but that's of course completely up to you. Medical insurance is required, and you will have to submit your insurance to Mejdi. The general age demographic kind of is varying. A lot of the people initially who signed up were like 50 plus. And I think that's probably because the people who easily committed are people who could more easily afford it, and that tends to be people who are a bit older. But now a lot of the average age has kind of like we're also getting a lot of people in their 20s and 30s. So I don't know, maybe I guess the average age actually is around 50. But there's a pretty big range at this point, and also there's a really big range in organizations, also in terms of like, as Ari mentioned, I think really importantly, not every organization is Jewish. Some of them are interfaith, some of them are specifically Christian or specifically Muslim, which is amazing. But also in like those that are Jewish, there's quite a large ideological range. You have like left as like if not now up to kind of like Trua and J Street. Maybe for people from the outside of this work that seems like not a big deal, but I think for those inside of this work we know that that's a pretty good range that we have, and I think that makes a lot of sense because we don't have to ideologically agree on every single political point in order for all of us to agree that the settler violence happening in the West Bank has to stop and that we want to stop annexation. And so this is an opportunity for a really broad base. And we're seeing that in the people who are signing up, which is amazing. How do we donate to support this effort? That's a fantastic question. If you can't join, but would like to donate, we would be incredibly happy for you to do so. If you go to the Protect the Harvest Net website at the bottom, there's a link to donate, but I'm also just going to put it right here in the chat. The donate is through the NIF, and it will go to Rabbis for Human Rights because they're an NIF-backed organization. But your donation it's specifically for the Protect the Harvest campaign, and that money will be used as necessary for the campaign itself. And we would be incredibly grateful to get support because it means that we can bring more people on the ground and ensure a really, really successful harvest.
I just want to note, I think actually one of the really cool aspects of this collaboration is exactly the fact that it is both cross-religious and cross-generational, right? That there is that wider range of ages that we have going. I think that especially for a program like this, we don't often get that same sort of a wide spectrum of ages, and I think especially all the more so for something as, like I said, as much of a demonstration of safety in solidarity that we can show. Sorry, there's a train coming, so you might hear a very loud train. But to be able to show that this is what solidarity quite literally looks like across denominational spectra, across age spectra, and across religious spectra, it is one of the holy, and I can say this because I'm a rabbi, it is one of the holiest things that we can do, truly.
I love that framing. If no one has any more questions, we can. Yes, Karen.
Well, I just was going to say, I want to thank people on behalf of Partners for Progressive Israel for being here. Ike had to leave. I want to thank you, Becca, for all the work you're doing, and Ari for what you're doing towards this. And we will send out, there's another question here. We will send out information after the in the next few days of how you can register and how you can contribute. And if you know other people, we encourage you to do that. This is very important to us, and our partnership with Protect the Harvest and all of the other organizations is extremely important to us. So, but Brent, you had a question, I see.
Yes, well, it's more comment. When I was there in Israel and on the West Bank visiting family, and I think it was 2019, I went out with I can't remember the organization, but people would meet. These were mostly people living in Israel or visiting Israel. It wasn't organized by a to bring people in as this group is. But I just wanted to comment. Sometimes there would need to be adjustments on which farm or which field or orchard, and sometimes other volunteers would join us or we would join them. So there was I had the sense that there was flexibility on any given day, and sometimes the what do you call them, the settler youth or whatever were moving around, and then sometimes the border police or would declare a closed military zone or a road closed. So there were a lot of variables, and usually we managed, or the volunteers who were organized on that particular day managed, but there was a need for flexibility, and there was certainly more frustration on the Palestinian families whose trees needed picking because sometimes, as I said, a closed military zone or settler youth, so-called, were around, and we had to try to pick somewhere else. So I just wanted to mention that, and sometimes you ended up picking with people, which was wonderful, not only Palestinian farm families, but with other volunteers who weren't part of the group that maybe we started with that morning. So that's my limited observations from 7 years ago. Thanks.
Thank you for sharing, and thank you for doing it. I encourage everyone to join partners in doing this and share it with your friends. And thank you, everyone, for being here. And yes.
I'm just going to say I'm happy to put my email in the chat, and I'm sure Becca can do the same. So, this way, if you all have any other questions that come up between now and the August 21st deadline, please reach out.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.